guitar players, my name is Josh Snodgrass, and today I'm going to show you how I record fingerstyle guitar. And we're going to cover the whole process. We're going to start with preparation. We're going to talk about setup, mic placement, mic selection, that kind of thing. We're also going to go on even to editing and talk about how to set up different effects like equalizer and compression and reverb, delay. And then we're even going to talk about mastering as well, so that you can take your guitar playing ability and make a really professional sounding recording. So first we're going to talk about preparation. A few things. Of course, everyone will tell you practice, 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 and that is true. You want to have the song you're going to record well under your fingers, where you feel confident playing it, and where you're not stumbling around looking for the next part. You want to really know your song, and so you practice it a lot. A few other things is, of course, you want to have new guitar strings. You certainly don't want old, dull guitar strings. You want new strings. A lot of times, you put them on the day before or the day of. That's great. And of course, a lot of guitar players will think, well, yeah, but my guitar will go out of tune if I do that. And it's true. You want to put on new strings and then stretch those strings. And maybe look up a YouTube video on how to stretch your guitar strings so that they can be nice and in tune and stay in tune. Nice, crisp new strings just sound great recorded. Makes a big difference. And yeah, so you want to keep the guitar in tune throughout the recording process. There's nothing worse than recording a great take and then going back and listening to it and say, you know what, that's a little bit out of tune, it just doesn't sound good. So we got to avoid that. Another thing is we need a quiet place to record. I used to live in a house near the train tracks, and that was rough. The train would go by and that take would be ruined. I'd have to wait for it to go on. Now I live by a road, and sometimes tractors or trucks will drive by and they'll ruin takes. But if you don't have a really quiet place, there's a few tricks you can use to reduce that outside noise, but really you want it to be as quiet as possible. Professional studios will have well-insulated walls and ceiling and floor and everything to where it'll be basically soundproof. You don't hear anything inside there. Most of us don't have that kind of room available to us, and so we have to make do with what we have. So a lot of times I'll wait for my family to leave or ask them to be quiet while I'm making a recording, and they're always very nice about it. But if you live in an apartment, you've got really noisy neighbors, and there's a dog that barks all the time or something, it's going to be tough. You might want to find a more quiet place to record. Another part of preparation is deciding, are we going to record with a metronome or without a metronome, with a click or without a click? That might be another term you hear. Now, the way that it would work, if you're going to record with a click, a lot of times you'll want to have that in your headphones. I actually don't recommend, if you've got just over-the-ear headphones and you're going to put a click in there, I don't recommend that, because a lot of times what you'll have is you'll be listening to this click and playing along with it, and everything will be going great, and then you go back and listen to your recording, and those mics will have picked up this click, 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 especially on quieter parts, or maybe the outro where your last note's ringing out, and all of a sudden tink, 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 and you're like, that's terrible. So I recommend actually just using earbuds, maybe even just one earbud if you're going to listen to a click. There's a couple of reasons to use a click. One is just to keep your rhythm just right on the money going through the whole time. Another reason is if you the reason I used to use a click all the time was because my rhythm was really inconsistent. I would speed up and slow down, and I'd go back to listen to the song, and I'd be like, okay, I played the verse slow and I played the chorus fast, and it sounded so bad. And so I'd play with the click all the time. Since then, I've used some tips to learning how to have better rhythm, and now I don't use a click at all. I just play the guitar, listening to it in the room. I don't use any headphones or anything like that. One thing is when you're using headphones to listen to fingerstyle guitar, and you put the mics in the headphones, there can be a bit of a delay between. And what causes is the mics go into your interface, and it has to get transferred over to digital, and then it goes through your processor and comes back, and then there has to be another transfer from digital back into analog for your headphones or earbuds or whatever. And that process is not instantaneous, and so you'd be playing and there's just a slight delay, and that would mess me up so bad. I think I'm kind of sensitive to that little delay. It may not be a big problem for you. I know some people it's not. But you just have to be aware of that. So for me, I prefer to just sit in the room and play the guitar and just listen to it like I always do when I practice. No click or anything. That's the way it works best for me. All right, well, let's talk about setup. This is a really important part of this whole recording process. This really determines your sound for the most part. And so generally what I do is I use 2 large diaphragm condenser microphones, and I point those at the 12th fret and the bridge of the guitar, kind of spaced back about 12 to 15 inches. And then I pan those left and right, just one all the way to the side, and that way when you listen in the earbuds, after you're done, you hear one mic over here, one mic over there, and that gives you a much bigger sound. I also use a direct box. So my guitar has a pickup, I plug in a cord to a DI box, and I send that in to the computer and use that right in the center. So I have 3 signals coming from my guitar. Some people just use the 2 mics, that's okay, but I like to use the DI as well in the center. And so then for me, I'm using Pro Tools as my DAW, but it doesn't matter what software you have. You can use, they all work the same way. They're just recording audio in, and then you can manipulate it, and that's great. Pro Tools is a very professional one. If you're looking for something, you have the budget for it, Pro Tools is great. They do have a free version, so you might try that. There are other much more affordable recording softwares out there. But for the specific equipment I use a couple mics. I use this here, Shure. This one is a KSM 44A microphone. I use this, and then I have a couple other mics that I'll pair with it. And if I had 2 of them, I would definitely use 2 of these, because these things are just great, but that's not in the budget for me. And I'll show you later that in just a bit that like microphones, we feel like we got to have these super expensive microphones. They really, the quality and difference when you hear it in the full mix is not as big as you might think. I'm going to show you some much more affordable microphones, and we can listen to them and see the difference. And yeah, we'll check that out. But for a DI, I use this Radial JDI passive direct box. One thing that's very important with this whole recording deal is that, so I've got active pickup in my guitar, so I need a passive DI. If you have a passive pickup, basically that means if you don't have a battery in your guitar somewhere, then what you need is an active direct box. This is one that takes phantom power. So this is, if you don't have power in your guitar, you need power in your DI, if if that makes sense. But yeah, since mine has a battery, I use this passive direct box, this JDI here, and this is just awesome. I highly recommend this brand. But I've got a DI box, I think it was like 25 bucks or 30 bucks or something like that I use when I go to concerts, because sometimes I forget and leave them. And so I don't want to have a more expensive piece of equipment that I'm just going to leave. And but if I record with that, the difference in sound quality is not super noticeable. There is one, but it's okay. So just work with what you have is one thing that I would definitely recommend. Then I also, for my interface, and this is a important piece of this whole thing, I use the Focusrite. This is an Scarlett 18i8, and this is a really neat device. So it takes power, you have to plug it in. It has 4 mic preamps on the front, so I've got 2 for my microphones, 1 for my DI, and then 1 that I never use for anything. They make a smaller version of this that just has 2 mic plugins that you can use. If you're just using microphones, you're not going to go with the DI. That would work great for you probably. I like the ability to have 4 plugins though. You can also plug your headphones right into this, and this will work with Pro Tools or pretty much anything else that you have. That's really an awesome thing, and it's pretty affordable for the sound quality. I mean, this is really good. And I should point out, some of the guitar players out there that you probably love and listen to, I mean, people like Tommy Emmanuel or someone, they're not recording with stuff like this. I mean, he's probably got $5,000 microphones, and his interface is, I'm sure, just, top of the line. You can spend a whole lot of money on this stuff, but as I said, we got to work within our budget, because having a recording of your music that sounds really very professional you don't need all that super stuff. I mean, it's nice if they have it. And I would use it if I had it, but I don't. So I use what I have here and what I can afford to get. So I'm going to move the camera and show you actually specifically my mic setup. Let's do that. So I have my microphones here. This is my Shure KSM 44A. I've got a Octava MK319. Now these are both large diaphragm condenser mics. They're my more expensive microphones that I have. This one, I mean, it's not super expensive. I got it like 20 years ago. And this Octava, I have to say, I do not recommend this mic, actually. If you're shopping, don't go get this one. I modified it using some YouTube videos. It's got a lot of problems. But for a long time, it's the only mic I had, the only large diaphragm condenser. And so I should say too, it's been on almost all my recordings. So, if you like my recordings, I guess maybe you like this microphone. But I would say we can do better than this. Even with a mic that's less expensive, we can do better than this. This KSM 44A is just awesome. I love this thing. If I had a second one, I would be so happy, but I don't. And they're good, very good microphones. Nice even frequency response. They're great. So if you're looking for something, and this is in the budget, that's like $1,000 I think right now, but if it's in the budget and you can get one, or get two especially, yes, that would be awesome. So let's record here and see what this sounds like. One thing I should point out is, when you're setting your volume, try to play the same volume in sound check as you're going to play when you record. Sometimes I have this tendency to play a little quieter during sound check, and then I play louder when I'm actually recording, and that causes problems. So for me, I've learned if I set my volume maybe a little bit lower than it looks like would be ideal during sound check, then my recording should be okay. And with digital recording, that's okay. You can usually bring the volume up and it's not going to be a big deal. But one thing is, if you set your volume too loud and then there's distortion, digital distortion sounds terrible. There's like nothing good about it. So if you set your volume too high, that's a big problem. If you set it a little bit too low, it's not a huge deal. So err on the side a little bit less. Okay, so here we go. We're going to record something. Okay, so that's to try on these mics, and now I'm going to totally change this setup to some less expensive options, and we'll see what that sounds like. Alright, guitar players, well, I've got another setup here. This is some less expensive mics and stuff. So first of all, one change I made was I went to the this cheapo Livewire Direct box instead of my Radial brand one. So that's one change. Also, I'm using less expensive microphones. Here I have a Moana brand microphone, and I'll put a link in the description below. But yeah, this one is a large diaphragm condenser, very affordable. It's $150 right now, I think. So, at that price point, much more affordable than the KSM-44A I showed you before. And there are mics, between those ranges out there, and you can get what you can. I'll put a couple other mics down in the description, links mics I've used and think that are good value. But I think this one's a great value. If you've got limited resources, one of these or a couple of these would be great options for recording fingerstyle guitar in that price point. Then this one over here is a Shure SM58. This is not a condenser microphone. This is a microphone that's typically used for vocals. And the reason I'm using it is because lots and lots of people have these. They're very, very common. It's inexpensive. I think when I got this, I think they might be going for like $130 right now. I'm not sure, but don't go buy one of these to record guitar. You want to, if you've got one, you can use it, and I'll show you what it sounds like. But I wouldn't go get one to record fingerstyle guitar. So yeah, I'm gonna record here, and then we'll go back and see what these sounds like, and we'll compare the two sounds. Alright, well, I've cleaned up my microphones, and in this portion of the video I'm going to show you like the super budget-friendly way to record guitar. I've got here on my little camera stand a Tascam DR05, and this is a little handheld recorder. It's these two little cylinders here on the corners. These are a couple of little microphones. And so recording like this, this is cheap because you eliminate a lot of stuff. You don't need any cables, you don't need no mic stands, anything like that. All you need is this thing and the little, you need a tripod, and then you need a memory card in here and a way to get that memory card onto your computer. I've got a little thing that plugs in through USB that does that. And so this thing, you can't plug your guitar's pickup into it, but it works. And so let's just try this here, and you can compare the sound quality. Push record, and let's see what happens here. Alright, well, let's go to the computer and try to put all this together and see if we can make something sound good. But yeah, so we're going to dive into listening, but to do that we need something to listen on. And so right here I've got a pair of headphones, and that's the way I listen. I've got these Sony MDR 7506 headphones. I think the best bang for a buck going with some good headphones would be a great way to go to listen to your mix. Also, I would recommend not probably using your, $15 earbuds if you can help it. If that's what you have, you can go for it. But the reason we need something good to listen back on is that every playback device has a different character, a different, frequency response, different frequencies that it emphasizes and different frequencies that maybe don't come out as loud. They all have kind of their own color. And so with that, we need to listen here when we're doing our mix to something that's going to, as faithfully as possible, show us the different frequencies. So, for example, if my headphones if they've got a certain set of frequencies that are quiet here and another, maybe somebody's phone is going to push those frequencies real loud when they listen on their phone speaker, then it's going to sound bad there. And we want our mix to sound great everywhere, whether it's played on a phone or a earbuds or a laptop or in a car or in a PA or wherever it is. We want it to sound good everywhere. And so we need some way to listen that's going to show us. We don't want to be listening with blind spots in the frequency response here. So, all right, well, let's dive into listening to what we record and seeing what we can do to make it sound better. Okay, well, I have my recording software open here. This is Pro Tools. And you can see these 3 blue stripes across the middle. These are audio files. And this is that first take that I did. And the top one here is the Shure microphone. Then this one is from the Octave microphone. And the one on the bottom is the DI microphone. And you can see I have these panned right and left and then in the center. And so I have these on 3 mono tracks, and I really prefer to do that. And you could set up a stereo track for the 2 microphones, but then you couldn't set up individual effects or equalizer. And I feel like that's really important especially when you're using 2 different kinds of mics. If you had a pair of mics that were the same, a matched pair, especially, you could probably get away with a stereo track, and you put the same EQ and compression on each one. But in this case, doing mono tracks works really well. But when I have these here 3 tracks grouped to where I can edit them, and I don't have to edit each one. I just can select them, and it selects all 3, and I can turn that group off as well to where I can just do one of them. But I like to have them grouped for the most part. Now, one thing is here, I've got the audio balanced with these pretty well, and the way that I can tell if I have especially the left and the right balanced, these 2 microphones balanced, is when I push play. You can look at right here on the master on this master channel. There will be a couple of indicators, that these things are, moving up and down right now. They're moving because of my voice. But here, when I start the audio, you can see that these will move independently. And you can see those both were moving about to the same level. They're not going to be perfect because there are 2 mics in different places. And so one might be a little bit higher at one point, one might be a little bit higher at the other point. And that's okay. That's about what you want like that. So right now, all these effects are muted. We're just listening to the raw audio. But I'm going to solo this Shure microphone, and I'm going to put it back in the center. So we can just listen to this one. It doesn't sound so great by itself, does it? But it's pretty faithful, pretty accurate rendition of what my guitar sounds like. I think that mic does a really good job. And so I set up EQ here, and I've got kind of a preset. And this is one thing you want to do basically with all acoustic guitar channels that you have, is you want to roll off the low end. So about 60 hertz or so, I have just cut off everything below that. And that's good because you don't need all that low rumbly stuff. I know a lot of times we think that we want lots of nice low frequencies, but there's actually no need for those things. There's nothing good. There's no good sounds coming from the guitar down there. They might just pick up some kind of rumbly sounds, maybe some background noise. So we don't really need that. So I'm just going to take that off. And then we're going to do a compression here. And so I'm using the C1 compressor here. And I just usually try to set this so that it's maybe about a 3 dB cut, maybe a little bit more than that. A lot of times here, I'll just use the classic compressor preset. And if your compressor has a preset, then that's okay. You can try that. You can adjust these ratio settings. This might be a bit high for acoustic guitar. having a 7 ratio, I might go down to maybe a 4, something like that. And the way that you adjust this is with a threshold. You can see, watch what I'm playing here. See, that sets the point that the compressor kicks in, and what the compressor does is it just makes it so that if the volume gets above a certain level, it starts to reduce it. That way you don't have the dramatic, loud parts. It kind of takes the edge off. And some people think compression is a bad thing, but really compression is needed because like a certain amount of compression. But I think with acoustic guitar, it's good to just kind of be minimal with it. But when you use compression, it helps to bring the overall volume up so that when you're listening, it's not like one part's really loud and then one part's kind of quiet, especially if there's background noise. If you're listening in your car or something, you want the whole thing to be kind of a consistent volume, or else you won't be able to hear the quiet parts, and you'll be turning it up and down, and that's just frustrating. So a little bit of compression is good. So we've got that set here. And then I'm going to pan this back to the right where we had it. And then we'll look at this track here. So I'm going to put this one in the center so you can hear this octave of mic all by itself. All right, this is with no effects. So that mic, I don't like the sound of it as much soloed. Again, here I've got this equalizer that I've got kind of this preset where I've just got a little bit of a cut here. And then we're going to add some compression in. Let's see, I've got this preset here. Okay, that sounds pretty good. So then let's see what the DI sounds like. So the DI sounds very different. Again, I've got the low end cut here, and this one I've got shaped a little bit differently. I've tried to kind of have a less rounded cutoff here, and so I've kind of used a couple of these channels on this equalizer here to to kind of move this to make it less dramatic of a cut there. And I've also cut up here by 4K, now up to 2 to 4K in this kind of range here. This is what makes the guitar sound brilliant, but also what makes it sound irritating. So if you pick with your fingertips, you might need to boost these frequencies a little bit because your guitar might not sound so crisp and sharp. But if you play with your fingernails or your picks, I play with my pick and my fingernails, and so I need to kind of cut this a little bit sometimes, especially on my bridge pickup, because it kind of amplifies these frequencies and it gets to be a little too much sometimes. So I'm going to cut that there, and let's see what happens. I like that much better. Then of course we'll add in some compression. Okay, now let's put this all back together here. And I need to pan this back to the left. Great. Okay, now I'm going to group these tracks again, and we're going to listen to all of them put together with the equalizer and compression addition. Okay, that's really sounding pretty good. The other thing that we can do, of course, is add in some effects. So the way I have this set up here is that I have these two aux buses up here set up with effects, and this top one has reverb. And what I have here is the True Verb from Waves. I have their gold bundle, and I'll put a link in the description below. I really love the gold bundle from Waves. I just think it's really good stuff. So what I've done here is I've just loaded the New York plate, but you can use any reverb that sounds good to you. I really like plate reverbs for fingerstyle guitar, and I'll let you see what this one sounds like. But I've set up on the, and one thing about this, I've removed the direct signal so that you're just hearing the reverb portion of it, because since I have it set up on a side chain here. So let's see what this sounds like. it's easy to want to put lots and lots of reverb on fingerstyle guitar, but I find that, you might want to turn it up to just see to make sure you know what the reverb is doing. But I turn it down to where it's kind of subtle in the mix, and where it's not just this, oh yeah, we're playing like in a, I don't know, in a room with all tile or something, like playing in a bathroom or whatever. But I try to have it sound a little more natural, like you're just, I don't know, singing in a room, listening to the guitar, and have it not sound overly affected. On this channel here, I have delay, and I'm using the Super Tap delay from Waves, and I just start by loading their analog delay, and then what I do is I just listen, and I just click along here on the little tap pad with the beats per minute, and then that makes the echo fall in line with the song, and it sounds really cool. So let's try this. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? All right, here we go. Let's just play. So it looks like it's about 100 beats per minute there. Now I'm going to turn this up so you can really hear. So you can see when that gets turned up quite a bit, it's very overpowering. It just kind of makes a big mess. But turned down subtly, it just works to fill out the sound. And so here we have a nice full sounding guitar. So for those of you who listen to music on my YouTube channel, this is basically, pretty much exactly what you hear there is this kind of a setup. All right, well, let's go and listen to the second recording that I did. This is the one with the Maono microphone, the SM58 from Shure, and then a Livewire DI. So this is dramatically different cost for this set of mics and DI compared to the first one. Okay, that's with no effects or anything, no equalizer. That's just the raw audio, and I think that this sounds really good, actually. It's amazing, when you think about it. This sure is certainly not ideal for this task, but you put it all together, and that sounds pretty good. I think that with some EQ and compression and effects, I feel like this could totally go on a CD. Very doable. I think it's a good quality recording here. So, and then that just goes to show, you can use inexpensive tools if you use them well, and just but even then, you saw my mic setup. It's not rocket science. I'm just doing kind of a simple recording, and it worked well. So let's listen to these individually here. So I'm going to mute these two, listen to just the Maono microphone, and I'm going to pan this in the center so we can just hear what it sounds like by itself. Okay, that sounds pretty good, but there is a kind of a pingy sound that I'm hearing throughout here. Let's listen. I'm hearing it especially right here. But that frequency is kind of overemphasized throughout this entire recording. It kind of sounds a little off. And that may be because of the mic placement. It may be a frequency that the microphone kind of picks up a little bit stronger. It may just be that my guitar kicks out that frequency more than it should, and I think that that's probably the one that's the case. But maybe it's a mix of all three of those, but it's just kind of too strong there. So let's turn on our equalizer and open that up here. And but now, of course, I've got my low end cut here, but now we need to know where is that frequency? And let me show you. I'm actually going to shut this again for a second and show you a tool that I use to find the specific frequency, because when I listen to something like this, there are some engineers that can just tell you, oh, I know where that's at. They can give you a number. But for me, I can think about where that's at, but I don't know exactly. So what we're going to use is this frequency analyzer right here. This thing is a really cool tool. You can see as I speak, these lines are dancing, here they're kind of going up and down, showing you the frequencies I'm talking with, and the orange line records the highest level at that frequency so far. And so you can clear the memory and it will start over again. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to clear the memory here, push play, and it will show us where the problem frequency is, hopefully. Very interesting. See, let me do it again. See that right there? That is a big old spike. It's at 4,400. Okay, so we can take that number back to our equalizer, and I can set this. Actually, I can just type in a number down here, 4,400, and I can set this to -6. All right, let's try that and see what happens. You notice here, I've got this, this is pretty narrow. You can adjust the width to be very wide or very narrow. And I'm going to set it pretty narrow with a cut here. Okay, that is way better. That is definitely, I'm going to call that problem fixed. One thing, when you're doing cuts here, I wouldn't go crazy in these I mean, you know, other than the low end, I wouldn't go crazy and cut stuff like 10 dB or 15 dB or something. 6 is really pretty dramatic. 3 is probably, you know, a lot of times what you need. If you make just enormous EQ cuts and stuff with fingerstyle guitar, it can sound unnatural. Now, there may be times when you feel like you need to do that. I would recommend in those times going back and maybe moving the microphones around and trying to get a little bit better recording from the get-go, as opposed to trying to just fix everything with EQ, because it can get really weird very fast. Now, one thing I'd point out too, if you're going to do a boost, don't do dramatic boosts. You know, maybe boost maybe 3K or something. I mean, 3 dB, and you can do pretty broad boosts. This might be a very broad boost here, but you can change the width. You know, maybe something like that. But that's too much. You know, maybe about 3 dB. But you know, I'm not actually trying to boost a frequency in this, but I'm just giving an example. But you always want to cut the low end. Whatever you do, don't boost this low end trying to get more bass, because these frequencies down here below 60 hertz are really below 80 if you're in standard tuning. There's nothing down there good that a guitar has. I mean, there's just, you know, the lowest string in the guitar is about 80 hertz. So anything below that is just going to be this muddy, either background noise or just boomy mess. So you don't need anything down there. Okay, so then we're going to turn on the compression. Maybe set it about the same as I was doing that. All right, that sounds good. You know, I think if I had 2 of these, I would definitely, I mean, I think that you can make a great recording with a pair of these Maono microphones. So let's go and look at the SM58 and see what happens with that one. All right, here. So I'm going to pan this to the center and then unmute this. Just see what this sounds like by itself with no equalizer. Well, that doesn't sound good. You know, I mean, it is a recording of a guitar, but it is not great. It is thin. It doesn't have the clarity that the other 3 microphones that I've used so far have. This is certainly less than ideal, but when you put all 3 of these, you know, the Maono, the Shure SM58, and the DI together, it sounds good together, you know, but by itself, it doesn't sound good here. So let's listen to it with the equalizer again and just kind of see what we can do to fix it. So I've got the low end. I'm going to do the same trick right here. Okay, well this, you know, I'm seeing that there's a couple of peaks there between 2, you know, one was about 2K, one was just over 4K. So, you know, but they weren't throughout the whole thing. They were just kind of intermittent, I guess. So maybe I'm just going to kind of cut a little bit of this sound here, do a little bit broader cut right there. feel like that's a little bit better. There's just no way to fake the clarity of the other microphones with this microphone. It's just not there. There's nothing you can do to fix it. It's kind of like you recorded with a super low resolution camera or something like that. You can't go back and get the clarity. Well, let's add in some compression. Again, just going for maybe about a 3 dB cut. Then, yeah, I think that's... Okay, that's not bad. I feel like that's cleaned up a little bit. It's, yeah, I feel like that's the best that we can do in this situation. So I'm going to pan that back to the left, bring this other microphone back in. I can tell down here I need to turn this microphone up a little bit. Together, I feel like that sounds pretty good, really. Yeah, it's funny because, you put this one by itself and it doesn't sound great, but you put them together and I think that the Maono microphone, its clarity kind of covers up for this other one a little bit. But the blend of them is nice. I think it's very good. So let's add this DI. Actually, let's just go and listen to this DI by itself. That will probably be a good thing to do. Interesting. I think that a lot of the problem that this track is having comes from just that pickup in my guitar is not, it's a good. I don't want to talk bad about my Takamine pickup. I love that guitar, but the pickup itself can be kind of bright and kind of have a brittle sound. So let's see what the frequency analyzer is telling us here. Not much. All right, well, this is one of those cases where I feel like the frequency analyzer is not giving us anything useful to work with in terms of, it's not showing, it's showing us where there's a specific problem in this mix. Another trick you can do sometimes is you can, make a boost and listen for the frequency that you don't like and then cut that. I feel like that's fixing what I'm hearing there. Maybe we'll cut around 1K here. Okay, so then let's do the compression. All right, so that's about set. That's set pretty good here. So let's put all this back together. It's amazing. You look at that, and I feel like that sounds good together. And the cool thing is we haven't even put our effects back in. So let's just go and unmute these, and I have these set up just the same way I had the other, just the same way I did with the other ones. That's a nice thing with having these aux buses is I can just do the same sends, and then the same effects settings that I had on the other track will go to this one as well. That's good to me. I think that sounds great. So let's okay, so now we're going to look at this DRO5 recording. Now remember, this is no interface, no microphones except what come on this device. There's no cables, no mic stands. This is very inexpensive way to record. Let's see what this sounds like with no effects and no EQ or anything. That's really, it's pretty good. It's a little thin maybe, but I think it really sounds pretty good. I'm going to bring in this EQ here. All right, and you can see here, I put a cut. It was about in the same spot that I did with the other Maono microphone, and I think it's just the frequency in this guitar kind of gets overemphasized right there. So let's do the compressor. Let's put that on there. All right, and then let's bring the effects back in. So I think that this sounds pretty good. I mean, it doesn't sound as full as the other recordings that I did with the microphones and everything, but it sounds good. It doesn't sound like this amateur cheapo recording. It's very doable, I would say, and it's very easy too. So, that's one thing. If you're on a really tight budget and you've got almost no money to do this, you might try using a DRO5 and use just making that work. Especially if this is just a hobby to you, that'd be a good way to go. If you're not trying to be a real professional or something, I mean, this would, I think, be very doable in a lot of situations. All right, let's talk about editing. So we're going to edit guitar. You can see that there's kind of these natural points where everything is kind of louder right there, and then it gets smaller, and then there's kind of this point where we're right before it gets big again. I'll zoom in close so you can see that. So this point right here. So we've got a note and maybe a second note that's a little quieter. Maybe this is probably a big loud bass note, and then we're going over here, and the notes get quieter. And so when you look at guitar audio like this, you want to edit at the smallest point. Okay, so here I might put a break right there if I was going to try to edit this, and maybe I want to edit right here. I'm going to get rid of this in-between part and move this over here. Now this isn't going to work. I can tell you why, because one thing here is you want to kind of zoom in a little bit and just make sure that you've got those two butted up to each other, and then you can do a fade. See, this is we're basically, this means so the first one's getting turned down while the second one's getting turned up, and this avoids a pop. Because if you have something like this, you might be able to hear that little click. That's not real dramatic right there, but a lot of times there will be a pop. And so this is going to sound weird because we're going from one part of the song to the next. You know what though? That edit works. If you don't know the melody of the song, that's a pretty good edit. Now, typically, we're not going to just chop out. We're not going to just chop out some melody notes. The reason that we would do this, I'm just going to undo what I just did. Just put this back together. Okay. The reason we would do this is because typically when I record, I'll record the same song like maybe 4 times or so, maybe 5, maybe 7 or 8 times even. I'll go through and play, and it might be that, okay, you know what, the chorus from this one sounds good, and then the second verse from the other one sounds better in this other take. Maybe I messed up a little bit, or there's a squeak or whatever. My rhythm's a little sloppy, one note's too loud, whatever the case. You're like, okay, I want this piece from this take, this other piece from this other take, and I want to put them together. So what you're going to do is, usually what I will do is I will have it to where I've got kind of like this, where I've got where I'll have a section of the first take and a section of the second take that I want to edit together. Here we go. So these, I've got these top 3 tracks, these bottom 3 tracks, and I'll line them up, and then I'll say, okay, I want to take this section here from the second take, and I'm going to paste that into the first one. I'm using keyboard shortcuts here. I'm going to put a crossfade on that. Now, this is going to sound weird because what you can't do is you can't take stuff recorded with one set of microphones and then paste that over and use it, paste it in with something set with, record with another set of microphones. What you want to do is, really when you're recording multiple takes, you want to use the same set of mics and you want to sit in exactly the same place, play at exactly the same tempo, the same volume. You want to make everything as much the same as possible so that you can edit between your different takes. Let's look and see what this sounds like here. So that edit works in terms of it's in the right spot, but the problem here is that you can hear now if I was going to try to edit over here with the and put the second edit here, I can in Pro Tools I might switch to shuffle mode, and what that will happen there is I'll select in that case, it kind of moves things around a little bit. So I would chop right before this, audio starts to get bigger here, right before the attack of this note. Then I go back and chop right before the attack of that note. Put a little fade on the two of them. Push the F key here and put a little fade in. So let's listen to this. All right, now you see, if it wasn't for the fact that this was different mics, that would be a very effective edit there. And this is what you can do with your songs. You can go through and chop them up and, now if you can play perfectly every time and just make your take exactly how you want it, well, that's awesome. I can't do that typically. There's times when I get a really good take where I'm like, oh, that sounds good. But even then, you know what? I like what I'll do then. Okay, see there. I don't like that. There's a little squeak. And I don't like that squeak. It's going to sound better for my listeners if that squeak's not there. Now I can go and try to find a measure that doesn't have that. Might be some times where I'm like, this chorus sounds great. It's just that one squeak. And guess what we can do? We can go back to our frequency analyzer and see if we can identify where that squeak is. First, we need to make sure that we know. All right, that's where the squeak is in time. Now we select that. Now we see, let me clear again. This 2479 number right there, that comes up again and again and again for me with these squeaks. For some reason, my guitar and my fingers, that's the frequency they like to make. So what we can do here is open up what's called Audio Suite and open an EQ. I'll just open up a 4-band EQ here, a mono 4-band EQ. And then I actually have a preset for scrape. And, this is kind of, I've set this up to where I have these dramatic cuts here. And so what number was this? This was 2479. So I'm going to push render. Then I'm going to undo it. Then I'm going to redo it. Now that didn't fix this perfectly, but it did reduce the dramaticness of that squeak. And, we could mess with this longer and try to see. We can mess with this longer and go back and maybe pick on this frequency here. That's about 5K. And, and go back and cut a few of those frequencies using my, my Audio Suite equalizer there. But for the sake of this little tutorial here, I'm just going to call... but that's an example of how you can cut out squeaks. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it works really, very, very well. One other thing I'd like to show you about editing is how to adjust the rhythm. Now, I'm just going to use this little edit as an example here. Let's say it sounded like this. You might be able to tell that this note's coming in a little bit too soon. And so the way that we can deal with that is in Pro Tools, you can use the shuffle mode and you can just kind of use this tool here to drag it out a little bit. And a lot of times, let me show you what happens. If you keep dragging, you get to the attack of the next note. So you can't drag past that point. You can also drag this first note out like that. And, so sometimes... Let's see what we get here. That sounds about right, I think, the timing. But I just want to show you that you can use that to adjust timing between notes. If there's a little bit of a pause, you can chop it. You can move those notes a little closer together. If there's a little bit, if it's rushed, you can move it apart sometimes. Again, that doesn't always work, but and it's better if you can just play it rhythmically right. Then you save yourself a lot of trouble going back and trying to edit these little notes and things. Let me show you one more thing about editing. That is that you can adjust the volume of individual notes here. So I'm going to put a little break here, again using my keyboard shortcut. And with Pro Tools, you can go and turn just this one note down. It will turn down whatever is between the edits. Or you can turn it up. Now you want to keep all, this, I just did this kind of quick, and you want to keep these all about the same volume. If you're going to turn it up, if they turn this one up by 2, then turn the other ones up by 2 as well. And so, this note wasn't too loud, but in this case, but if you have a note that is too loud or too quiet, you might try doing that. That's pretty helpful. And sometimes if just the bass note's too quiet, I'll put in a break and I'll go back to my equalizer and just select this little section and maybe turn down the low end a little bit. So you can tell, people always just assume that, like, oh yeah, when they hear recording, that guitar player just pushed record and then that's what happened. Well, there are guitar players that are like that, but there's not very many of them. And when I say not many, I mean probably just a handful in the world, probably. Most of the guitar players you ever listen to, their music is being edited to make it sound better when you listen to the recorded, the recorded version. One way you can tell this, if you go listen to a guitar player play live versus what they sound like in the recording, there's going to generally be a difference. For people like Tommy Emmanuel, my goodness, all the respect in the world that he sounds so good live, and you can tell that there's not much editing that goes on with his recordings, if any, because he can nail it. And there's other guitar players like that too. But for me, I'm telling you, there's some editing that goes on, and probably for you as well. And that's okay though. Because we're just trying to make music that's enjoyable for people to listen to, and this is part of the process of doing that. So I also told you we'd talk about mastering. So we're not gonna, the biggest trick with mastering is to listen to your recording compared to other people's recordings. Because what's going to happen is you're going to listen to it here in your recording software, and you're going to, and your headphones or whatever, and you're going to think this sounds great. Then you're going to go out and put it in your car, and it's going to sound terrible. And you're going to be like, what's going on? And so what I do with my recordings is when I'm trying to get them ready to put on a CD or something, I listen to them on as many different devices as possible. I'll listen to them in the car, I'll put them on the TV, put them on my phone, put them on my earbuds. I'll go find some little cheap, stereo to listen to them. Get some big speakers or whatever I can, put them on as many different devices. And the other thing that I try to do is compare them to a professionally mastered recording by some, world-class guitarist in a similar style. Now, if I'm playing something soft like this, I'm not going to compare that to Tommy Emmanuel's like Classical Gas or something. I'm going to find something that someone has that's soft and pretty and put the two together and see, are the volumes about the same? Are the EQs about the same? Do they sound similar? Are my effects like way over the top compared to the other one? And so that comparative listening, that is a huge tip. The other thing is listening on all these different devices, because sometimes you listen in the car and it might sound, oh, there's way too much bass, and that will usually be the place where you might be listening to your headphones and think it sounds great, and you'll go listen somewhere else and the bass will just be out of control. You need to come back and put those bass cuts in. I'm telling you, you need them. Or you might listen to it and then you go and put it on the TV and it's distorted now. And so you need to kind of turn your volume down a little bit. And that's one thing. So when you're doing mastering, one of the main things you need is a limiter. And what I have right here is and this is, again, part of that Waves package. And I have the L1 Ultra Maximizer. And so I put this on here. And then really the biggest setting the two most important settings here is you've got, the out, or let's see, and you go to load, and then there's one in here somewhere, mastering. That's what you load the mastering setting. And so that sets this out ceiling at -2. That means you're not going to get anything, going over that. And then you set this threshold. Again, it's kind of like the compressor. So let's listen. You can tell it's just beginning to get into this, as I turn that threshold down, it's just beginning to get into this section. And that's what you want. You don't want it cutting more than just a few dB here, because then it's going to get very, it's going to sound bad. So let's listen to what happens when we do that. All right, and you can tell there that it's getting distorted, so we need to back that off. Now, I find that between a little bit of compression on the channels and then adding this in, and then I also use a multi-band compressor on the master channel. Between all that, I get a nice loud, without being distorted, I get a loud enough recording to where it's going to be comparable to what other guitarists are doing. And that's a good thing. So then let's look at this. And well, for the overall output volume, this is what we're using, is this limiter. But then before that, I've got a multi-band compressor, and this is a C4 compressor by Waves. What this multi-band compressor does is it compresses the different frequencies individually, and that's kind of a cool thing. You don't need this. I just find it's kind of helpful to balance things out, and you can tell I don't set dramatically. The other thing you really need when you're doing mastering is you need a multi-band equalizer here. And this, you just want something, again, I've got the low end cut on this too. And then you can go through and you can raise or lower these different frequencies. I don't really have much going on here. I've got a little tiny bit of a cut at 2K. It looks like this isn't really not much happening, maybe left over from some previous setting. All right, and again, on my master channel here, this is where I put this frequency analyzer. I just kind of put it at the end of everything so that I can, it's the last thing. It doesn't actually affect the audio at all. You can just listen to it and see what you're doing. So that's kind of a quick tips on how to master your own music. There are some companies out there that have kind of AI mastering, they call it, and you can upload your finished track to them, and then they will just kind of use this AI to master it. In my experience, those don't work great for fingerstyle guitar. Those would work a lot better probably for a more typical recording that's like a full band or something. But I don't really like the way that they sound with fingerstyle guitar very much. I find I can get a more customized approach with these few tools here. And this is not the kind of stuff that professional mastering companies use, but I feel like, when you're doing comparative listening, you're probably not going to notice a big difference in audio quality between my recordings and something that somebody else is doing, other than maybe the guitar playing. But, it's probably not coming from my mastering issues here. All right, well, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it's been informative. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will go back to making guitar lesson videos here sometime soon. So you take care. Bye.